Welcome to the Monday edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes podcast. This is your co-host Craig Graves, and today we're going to share a short segment from episode number 6, Suicidal versus Homicidal Risk Factors, what we know and what we don't know. This is the Monday, I'm not sure when you're going to be listening to this, but this is the Monday after the events in Ohio and in El Paso, Texas. And in this episode, Chris and I talked about mass shootings and these kind of events, if you will, and what to do about it. So if you know somebody who you think is a threat to themselves or to someone else, well, what do you do? You know, it might seem pretty straightforward. I have to turn those folks in, but who do you turn them into? And once you do turn them in, there's moral and ethical issues that have to be worked out before anything can be done. And even if those people are taken into some kind of custody, you know, it's very hard to do anything to them until some specific threat or some kind of violence has taken place. So there's some things going on there that make it a little bit tricky. And this is about 15 minutes worth of episode 6 where Chris and I talk about, you know, those very things. So take a listen. Love to hear your feedback through outtherapisteyes.com. You can use the contact us link there or just send an email to contact@throughouttherapisteyes.com, and we would love to hear some of your feedback. Okay? So here goes, folks. Enjoy, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. You know, let me ask you this, man. You know, I'm not sure. I guess majority of these folks, maybe some are, but aren't in therapy. But if I think you're a threat to harm yourself or somebody else, I mean, what action can I take on
There
that?
you go. Perfect segue. Did you do that on purpose?
No, I did not.
That's perfect. It's perfect because I'm curious, struggle with that for a second, Craig. Do you know what you would do? So you see this guy, he's made some statements, he's messing around with you, but he seems really serious, it seems kind of off. You know, and you get more and more concerned, like, dude, I think that needs to be checked out. What would you do?
You know, I guess you could report him to police or somebody like that, but I'm not sure what action they can take until he's actually communicated some kind of threat or actually done something that's specific. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, you're really pretty close on, and it is. It's a perfect segue into something I really wanted to talk about, the limitations that we have in the field when it comes to, okay, you've assessed that there's a risk and there's enough actionable items to go on. You know, what happens? What do we do? And this is a qualifier here. This is a real problem that we have in the field, and it's an ethical issue, and it's a complicated legal issue, as well as probably moving on to a bit of a moral issue, which is a mess when you put all those things together.
Yeah.
It really is. Before I forget to mention it, I did want to say on the ethical front, too, we have something called tears off. So clinicians know that when we feel like someone or a group of people is in danger, we have an ethical obligation called a duty to warn. And
yeah, I think that should go further than just therapist. I think everybody should have an ethical.
Interesting thing, and I don't know that it is.
Something out.
I don't know that it is.
I'm sure it's not, but I think it should be. Even if you're suspicious, at least in today's world, with all this crazy stuff happening.
And that's what we're talking about cultural awareness, Craig. Because we're going on a little tangent here, but that's okay because school teachers or police officers or pretty much any professional organization is going to say, if you suspect a child of being molested or neglected in any way, you have duty to report that to the Department of Social Services. You have no question. Suicide, we also have an ethical obligation to break confidentiality, and generally I think professional disciplines kind of know that. Clergy,
Mm-hmm.
Homicidal, I don't think people think about much in other disciplines and stuff, and I can't answer you if there's an ethical obligation for a clergy to report that. I know there is for child abuse.
What about therapists? If you think I'm going to...
Yes, that's what I'm saying. For mental health professionals, we know that there is a duty to warn if we know somebody is imminently going to be hurt.
Got it.
We will have to call. We will have to notify you. Say I have an actionable threat. I just need to notify you.
What's the definition of an imminent? Is that like me specifically saying, "Hey, Chris, I'm going to go in here and do
Right.
this"?
I go back to the references earlier about what we kind of look for in the risk factors.
Yeah.
It's there. We know.
Is
but
it a risk factor if I come into your office and I say, Chris, I've been thinking about going down to the, local library and committing heinous crimes? I mean,
it's an early risk factor.
Okay. So
I got to have
something you would report.
I got to have more information. I'm going to probe you more. I'm going to talk to you more. Do you have guns? Have you ever thought about doing this before? What's going on in your life?
But at what point does it become an ethical obligation for you to report it?
Now we're going to go through into ethics conference and discuss that for a few hours.
Okay.
Really. But I want to get back to what happens instead and spend our time there, because that is a major issue that I wanted to point out. When you go through the process of contacting the police, they're going to point you over to the magistrate. And what the magistrate's going to do is they're going to get information from you about what you know and what you've heard and what you're thinking. And they're going to make a decision, we need to assess this, and we're going to go involuntarily pick somebody up and bring them in for an assessment. So it's called an involuntary assessment. Every state has different names for that. In Florida, what was it called? Baker Act me. In Florida, it's called Baker Act.
Okay.
A lot of states have had legal cases where, you have to follow the law because it wasn't followed and risks weren't looked after, and we now are going to say you have to.
Yeah. So
So it's also a very litigated thing and not really clear, and a lot of different states have different regulations for that. But most states, I know in West Virginia, when my very first job working in mental health or crisis hotline, we would go out mobily to people's homes and facilitate this process. Now, in West Virginia, it was a little different than here. We would have an actual mental hygiene commissioner that would, be on call. We got a crisis call at 11 o'clock at night, and we're going to come to your house. We're going to talk to you. We call the mental hygiene commissioner. He comes out. There's different processes in different states, but it's actually a legal action that is determined. In this state, the legal action is determined after you're in the hospital, I believe.
Right.
But what we're doing is we are taking your civil liberties away. This is why it's a serious deal. And we're saying you can't be anywhere but in our custody.
Yeah.
For a short period of time, 24 hours, sometimes probably 36 hours or stuff. And we're going to assess you in a facility, in a hospital, or an emergency room.
So do you, in that kind of situation, does the therapist go out to the person's house, or does it law enforcement, they bring them back to the hospital? How does that whole thing
Different
look?
states do it differently, but different states do it differently. Mobile crisis teams will do that,
Yeah.
But you file with a magistrate in any jurisdiction, essentially, they're going to have the process to go through and do it. So that's
Right.
bottom line that you need to
Yeah,
know.
I was just thinking, if I think somebody's homicidal, I'm not going to knock on their door at midnight and say, "Hey,
Right.
buddy, we need to have a chat."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, you're bringing the police, and they're going to take him into custody if the magistrate determines, or in West Virginia, the mental hygiene commissioner determines there's a risk and a concern. But so then play that out for a little bit. What happens is they get into a facility and they get assessed. And that's great. And this is all very strong, and we do it well, and we know what we're doing. And, we may begin medication. We may not. We have you in a facility. But for how long? I mean, you've taken their civil liberties away and you put them in a facility. People like to think it's real easy. Oh, this person's a risk. Well, take them away, lock them up, keep them there. They're a menace to society. They're scary. I'm concerned. No, they're a person. They're a person, and they need treated, and they do get treated, but it is short term, particularly if they're not voluntary. So we stabilize. They say, okay, mea culpa. Shouldn't have said that. That was stupid. Guys, I ain't going to do anything. And we say, well, okay, don't. Okay. Safety is achieved. But with somebody that has, and we'll talk about different things like bipolar or, schizophrenia or, different conditions, or just a really rough marital life over a period of a year, and they go in and out of trouble. They go in and out of depression. People that have strained relationships with teachers, whatever, tough social experiences, bullying and being picked on. I mean, they're going to go in and out of that over a long period of time, and that's the thing that we're really concerned about. We can deal with short-term stability. Safety comes first, but after you're safe, we can't just keep people.
Yeah.
It's not ethical. It's
Yeah.
not reasonable. It's not moral. It's not legal.
Right. So let me ask you this. Now, every time there's a school shooting, the left says it's a gun issue and the right says it's a mental health issue. Has treatment of mental health changed over the last couple of decades? Because if you think about it, Chris, I don't remember any school shooting before '99, I think, and that's when Columbine happened. I never dreamed of anybody bringing a gun to school.
Yeah.
And now these things are common occurrences. And people are saying it's a mental health issue, which I think we could dive way into that, about some theories about what's going on there. But something has shifted over time. Is it lack of mental health treatment today versus 20 or 30 years ago that's spurring these events? I mean,
I don't necessarily think it's a lack of treatment, though. We need that is, I think, obviously, and probably a little bit biased in doing it in the field. We need that as a major highlight. I talked with some persons that knew statistics that were doing trainings about safety and whatnot, and they kind of would somewhat make the argument that really mass murder events have been going on for a long time. We have semi-automatic rifles now, we have bombs, we have a lot of different things that could do a lot more damage, which causes more of the dramatic events. But going back to whatever he was talking about more intelligently, 1823 and whatever in the school, little school prairie on the hill, the dude would bring a knife and kill 4 people. I mean, that would happen regularly.
Yeah.
So the numbers and the statistics, people can get a little bit skewed with the dramatic aspects of a semi-automatic rifle unthinkably in a school.
Yeah.
We can do that now because of technology, but we could do that years ago with swords and stuff too.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more that we need to know about that.
I'm not saying there's a gun issue at all. I think that
Right.
there's
I know you're
other
not,
things going on, and I think banning guns is not going to stop mass murders and crimes. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that it seems like now, and maybe it's 24/7 news channels looking for the next big thing
That's
to
a
jump
part of
onto,
it.
or whatever the deal is. But I just don't remember mass murder being an issue, until fairly recently in the grand scheme of things.
And I'm suggesting that it was.
Okay, well,
I'm suggesting that it was, and that's a little thing that we miss, because of the 24-hour news cycles, and again the bigger events. I mean, when you hear the numbers that Columbine was the first major event where so many people were killed, that's probably true. Because what were you going to do back in the day with your 6-shooter?
Yeah,
you take a couple shots and somebody takes you out with a punch.
Right.
Now you take a couple shots with a semi-automatic rifle, and that's a bigger concern.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I'm glad you brought gun control. You can't not talk about gun control when you have this topic of homicidal risk factors on the table. I really want to highlight a concern that I have as a passionate mental health professional, making my life's work around these issues. And I can use this platform to make the point that we really need to avoid fear influencing our decisions. We need to be logical thinking. We need to be research oriented. I'm saying research dollars. I'm saying we need to study this stuff. We need to be thoughtful about what we're doing, not acting out of fear, particularly after an event that happens. Because I see a big fat danger of really discriminating against all of us, actually. Because when we're talking about mental health, we all have a breaking point. We can't be discriminating against a diagnosis. We can't be discriminating against mental health. We can't be further driving, myths and misconceptions about this whole field that we've got going on. And I see a great danger in that. So I'm just kind of warning us about that. We have to be careful to understand people do need treatment, but we don't need to be, just because you see a therapist, you can't have a gun, or crazy things like that. And I've heard people suggesting stuff like that.
Yeah, I think
nuts.
that's
Nuts.
ridiculous. I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment.
Yes.
I do think that there could be some things. I'm not going to get into that on this particular show tonight, at least. But maybe there are some Second Amendment limitations, if you will.
Yeah.
And again, I hope I don't get any hate mail for saying
right.
that.
Well, as long as we're being thoughtful about it and balanced in the
right.
way that we're trying as a society to deal with these issues.
Yeah, and I don't think taking guns is going to stop people from doing heinous acts.
Yeah.
People in foreign countries are strapping bombs to themselves and blowing themselves up in marketplaces, and So there, where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. Yeah. I will say the one suggestion I will put out there as a proponent, we do have people already in place. People are worried about, hey, we're going to spend all these dollars, these public dollars on mental health people in schools and this type of thing. Look, we've already got a lot of things in place that probably aren't really being used appropriately.
Absolutely. I'm not a big news watcher just because of the I think it's a bunch of fear-based things in a lot of ways. But I did hear that the kid in Parkland had like 39 instances of saying he was going to do things, and the FBI, he was on the FBI list or whatever, and nothing was done, and he ended up carrying out his act.
And I don't know about prior cases and specifics with that. We could probably go into detail and talk for hours about it, but I would say what I was saying before about the involuntary commitment process. He might have been cleared and safe 39 times.
Could have, I don't know.
And there's people that have been.
You think after 39 times, somebody would have said, "Hey, this guy's not stable."
I'm saying in not that particular instances, but in 39 times, somebody may have been in the hospital and 39 times been able to be safe at the end of that hospitalization. What do you do then? Do you keep him in a hospital for a decade?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's part of the.
Those are tricky things.
That's what I was talking about before. We need to be aware of the public being aware of the ethical and the moral and the legal, intersection here.
Yeah.
With a complicated mess of, yeah. So, but the things that we already have in place can work if clinicians in schools and social workers in schools are used properly, where we have more of an awareness about, hey, we just need you to take a look out on this guy.
Yeah.
Instead of pushing some paper or doing some of this stuff with assessments and different things that they really, really get bogged down on, and I can tell you that that's the case with a lot of clinicians already in place. They ain't doing clinician work. They're doing, paperwork and stuff. Yeah. Let's let them have a cultural awareness of looking at people.
Yeah.
Because you can really rule a lot of people out that aren't at risk.
Yeah, true, very true.
You can rule, this kid's not a concern. I could say that as a clinician.
Yeah.
But this one is a little bit more alarming to me based on my science knowledge on mental health. Yeah. That we need to let them do that.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of evaluation process to figure these things out, because I think people are so afraid these days that they err on the side of caution, and then, I don't think there's a real way to identify who's a threat and who's not, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah.